All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive viral hit in the dark contemporary romance space, Insatiable by Leigh Rivers. If you've been anywhere near literary circles lately, you know this genre has carved out a fiercely dedicated fan base. And Insatiable, it is a fascinating example of why. We're not just looking at a dark love story here. We're dissecting what happens when two profoundly broken people try to build a foundation right in the middle of absolute chaos. It's an incredible look at the actual mechanics of the dark romance genre itself.
Now, since we're going to be pulling back the curtain on some intensely psychological layers today, I want to mention right up front that if you want to experience the source material for yourself, the full audiobook is actually linked down in the description. Having that audio playing is a fantastic way to really feel the themes we're unpacking today. All right, so let's look at the core dynamic that sets this whole crazy narrative in motion.
The entire vibe of this first installment in the Edge of Darkness trilogy hinges on one deeply skewed perception. Our male protagonist looks at the girl who absolutely shattered his teenage heart, and he categorizes her as a snake in an angel's skin. Think about that metaphor for a second. It tells us exactly how fractured his worldview has become, right? He's projecting all his own pain onto her. He completely refuses to see her as a complex human being, and instead he twists her into this almost mythological figure of betrayal. It sets up this agonizingly raw, totally polarizing dynamic literally from page 1. Their whole relationship is just rooted in this bedrock of profound misunderstanding.
And the way Rivers structures this narrative, it is masterfully done. She glides between dual timelines to give us this jarring, stark contrast. We're constantly jumping between this sweet, incredibly innocent teenage past and a pitch-black, super high-intensity present. We find out that it was this deeply shattered heart that accidentally drove our protagonist straight into the violent, blood-soaked trenches of the criminal underworld. And the brilliance of this dual structure is that it doesn't just show us who they are now, it actually forces us to mourn the innocent kids they used to be. It makes the heavy darkness of their present reality hit so much harder because we know exactly what it cost them to get there.
So, that journey straight into the darkness brings us to Cade Mitchell, our male lead. Cade is a total masterclass in a very specific literary archetype, the morally black antihero. Now, in psychological fiction, a character like this, they completely lack a conventional emotional compass. Normal boundaries of right and wrong? Yeah, they simply do not apply here. Instead, his entire reality is defined by this extreme, unyielding drive for violent protection. He breaks literally every single psychological and ethical rule he ever set for himself, operating from the shadows just to relentlessly stalk and watch over her. It's a really deep dive into what actually happens when devotion crosses that line into complete, unchecked psychological obsession.
And tracing Cade's evolution is a genuinely fascinating psychological journey. The irony here is just incredibly thick. Back during his adolescence, Cade actually realized how emotionally detached he was and voluntarily checked himself into therapy. He literally tried to teach himself how to feel. And why? Solely so he could be a safe haven for Stacy Rhodes. But then, a catastrophic, deep-seated betrayal tears them apart for years. Because he opened himself up so vulnerably, that betrayal weaponizes his trauma. It mutates those fierce protective instincts into a terrifying, real-time game of total possession in the present day. He adopts the super strict, if I can't have her, no one else can, mentality. Meaning, he's absolutely willing to eliminate any perceived threat that even dares to approach her.
Meanwhile, at 21 years old, Stacy's reality is equally devastating, though in a totally different way. She's trapped in what can really only be described as a structural family nightmare. It's so crucial to understand the sheer, suffocating isolation of her situation. She isn't just dealing with a bad home life. No, she's navigating a deeply insular environment that is actively hostile to her very existence. It's a trap where the exact people who are supposed to protect her are the ones actively tearing her down.
The day-to-day reality of Stacy's survival is honestly harrowing. She's enduring severe psychological and physical abuse, most of which is orchestrated by her violently manipulative stepbrother, Chris. But you know what makes her character so incredibly compelling? It's how she handles this nightmare. She doesn't break. Instead, she maintains this quiet, fiercely resilient survival mechanism. It is so inspiring to witness characters who go through profound institutional and familial trauma, yet completely refuse to surrender. She relies on this massive reservoir of inner strength just to wake up and get through another day, meticulously guarding whatever tiny fragments of herself she has left.
So here's where things really pop off. The crucial point of this whole story is the sheer impact when these two wildly disparate worlds finally collide again. You've got Cade stepping out from the ruthless, expansive landscape of the criminal underworld, and then you have Stacy trapped in the claustrophobic confines of domestic captivity. When Cade gets this brief, high-stakes window of freedom, he crashes directly back into a close-quarters orbit. The tension that's been building up between their contrasting environments means that the second they are face-to-face, boom, all their carefully constructed defensive shields violently shatter.
Their reunion literally turns their volatile history into an absolute war zone of mutual pining. Rivers builds this fast-paced, multi-layered narrative strictly on sharp contrasts. She places intense, scandalous passion right alongside this jaw-dropping, hate-fueled intimacy. And honestly, this is exactly why readers eat this specific subgenre up. Because underneath all that intense protective jealousy, there is an exceptionally realistic, deeply poignant exploration of institutional abuse and mental health trauma. It constantly challenges you, the listener, to navigate that incredibly blurry line between toxic domination and unconditional devotion. It really makes us question what coping mechanisms look like when traditional safety is just completely off the table.
Now, to truly grasp the weight of this pulse-pounding narrative, we absolutely have to talk about the medium through which so many people experience it. The source material specifically highlights the conversational narration of the audiobook, and man, it is so easy to see why. The performance dramatically shifts how the story hits you. It takes a gritty, high-angst psychological thriller and elevates it into a deeply immersive, almost cinematic experience. You see, audio as a medium uniquely enhances psychological thrillers because it literally forces you to sit right in the tension with the characters. The conversational narration captures the stark contrast between our leads just perfectly. It beautifully renders Stacy's quiet resilience, bringing her fight for survival into stark relief against Cade's low, unhinged alpha growls. You can actually hear the unhinged devotion as he wages a one-man war against anyone who dares dim her light. The vocal performances make every low, possessive threat feel completely immediate and totally spellbinding. It adds this layer of realism that text alone sometimes really struggles to convey. Now, I need to echo the source text here and emphasize that a narrative exploring this heavy level of trauma demands an absolute trigger warning. It pulls zero punches in its depiction of abuse. But this dark buildup is very intentional, and it culminates in a brutal, profoundly cathartic climax. In the dark romance genre, this kind of explosive catharsis isn't just extra, it's necessary. It finally relieves the immense psychological tension built up over the entire story. And then, it hits you with a staggering cliffhanger that'll leave you completely breathless, offering a triumphant, high-octane ending to this phase of their journey. This incredibly complex narrative leaves us facing a highly polarizing question about survival, trauma, and soulmate bonds forged in the absolute deepest chaos. Throughout this explainer, we've seen how broken characters navigate a profoundly broken world, turning to extreme measures just to carve out a tiny sliver of safety. It sets up a fascinating philosophical dilemma. Really, how far can or should someone go to protect the person they love when all the conventional rules of society have already completely failed them? If you want to experience this jaw-dropping collision for yourself and explore how these deeply flawed characters navigate their dark reality, don't forget the full audiobook is linked in the description below. But as we wrap up this explainer, the story leaves us with one final lingering question to ponder. When a bond is built entirely in the dark, instead of trying to outrun the shadows, is it ever justified to let love burn down the entire world just to build a sanctuary from the ash?